This program has been made possible in part by the following sponsors. The Vancouver Courier newspaper. Vancouver lawyers Dumal and Boscovich. Where will you find 50,000 people who could be voting en masse in a block? Where in the Lower Mainland would you find such people? Well, the peninsula, called the University of British Columbia, almost 50,000 students, not to mention staff, faculty, and so on. So it's quite a big constituency, and it's always interesting to see what, if anything, folks are thinking about. James McElroy is the president of the Alma Mater Society at UBC, and he's here with us. Hi, James. Great to see you. Yeah.
Jeremy.
Why am I calling you James? I've been doing this since I met you. It's Jeremy.
It's Jeremy,
yeah.
I
I apologize. I keep calling you James. It's Jeremy.
Happens all the time.
Okay, hi, Jeremy. Before we get into some of the specifics with UBC, let's spend just a moment on these associations themselves. One similar situation in the Lower Mainland has been front page news off and on over the last couple
Unfortunately,
weeks
yes.
at Kwantlen.
Yeah.
But that's not the first time this has happened. At Kwantlen, we've got some sort of, rumors of malfeasance and money being misspent and so on. But I recall a kid I knew who got involved with the student council at Langara some years ago, and he thought it was a big joke. He said, look, these people pay me $75 to show up at a meeting in which we do nothing, and he comes from a very wealthy family. He's basically a multimillionaire. What's all this stuff about?
Well, there's a long, colorful history of student associations in BC, and for the most part, I'd say it's really positive.
Yes.
A lot of really great things have come out of it.
Sure.
Unfortunately, you do get bad apples from time to time, and that's just sort of growing pains, but no more or less, I'd say, than in any municipal government or province or the federal level either. So
that's true. But for some reason or other, maybe I'm a cockeyed optimist, but I would think that youngsters getting involved in political process would tend to be cleaner, more honest, more determined to make sure that the roads are smooth.
Well, absolutely, and I think for the most part that's the goal. But every once in a while there are bad apples that come through, as I said, and try to take advantage of systems, and we do the best we can to fight against it. And Kwantlen was actually a really fantastic evidence of students coming together last week, and very clearly demonstrating that they were not happy with how things were going with their student union and took back control. And I think if more of that happened when these issues arose, when you get students that can organize together, I think things would be a lot better. The problem is a lot of the times people don't pay attention. Evidenced, just 30% of people showed up to vote in the City of Vancouver elections. So where are the 70% when something goes wrong? Everyone has an opinion, but not everyone comes out on election day. And I think it's a problem that's faced at all levels of government, including the student union level.
Exactly. Okay, now if you were on a public panel right now with people of all levels of society, and they asked you, what do students really want these days? What's the general tone or tenor out at a place like UBC? I know it's complicated because there's 50,000 people and they all have a different viewpoint.
Exactly.
But in general, is this a political time? Are people motivated to change the world? Are people just trying to get a barista gig? I mean, what are people after?
At the end of the day, students, just like anyone, need food in their bellies, a roof over their head, and some way to make money. And most students, and especially since 2008, have been particularly worried about what comes after graduation, what sort of job market is available for them. Will their time studying engineering physics or biochemistry or philosophy have any real meaning sort of outside of campus? And
no, there's a big development opening out in Steveston there's going to be a huge 10-story building filled with philosophers.
Absolutely, yeah. And so the number one issue I think facing students right now is the uncertainty of the future. Canada, unfortunately, has lagged behind the rest of the world in terms of investing in a knowledge economy. We're still very reliant on natural resource extraction and sort of more basic industries. And unfortunately, we're increasing the sizes of our universities, but not increasing the size of jobs available outside of the university. So I think that's the most pressing issue for students right now.
We're supposed to be developing a huge sort of industrial base for a city, just the other side of the viaducts, knowledge-based. You know, two of the universities are going to locate some stuff there, some activities there, but also lots of the latest cyberspace toys and so on. Is that a growing possibility for UBC people?
Possibly, but I personally think there needs to be more. In the last few years, we've noticed that at UBC alone, 7,000 students are graduating, going out into the workforce, and there most certainly isn't a one-for-one people retiring. And as you know, the baby boomer generation stays in their jobs longer and longer as mutual funds dry up. It's sort of an ever-increasing problem for young people to get entrance into the workforce.
I'm getting to the place where I'm finding young people looking at me like, would you please get on an ice floe and get out of here? Like
I wouldn't go that far.
I'm taking up oxygen, I know, for everybody who's 20 years or 30 years younger than me. Do you sense a kind of optimism? Do you also sense people of your age group saying, I'm going on to other places? Vancouver is not a market for me. I've got to get to London, England. I've got to get to Beijing. I've got to get to Brazil.
I don't think London's a place to go right now, particularly. But absolutely, in fact, UBC specifically has a huge alumni network popping up in East Asia. And in fact, the Hong Kong base of UBC's alumni chapter is probably one of the most active of any Canadian universities. So
really?
A lot of our graduates are going east and are trying to make those connections with Asian markets. And I think that's a particular boon that's gone unnoticed in BC, unfortunately.
Does that connection literally pay off in terms of personal connectivity? I mean, if you've got a huge Alma Mater Society base in Hong Kong, as you just said, does that mean that people will sort of welcome you if you want to show up and say, look, I'm looking for an opportunity?
Absolutely. And in fact, UBC's done a really good job of that, of trying to create these networks in sort of major metropolitan areas around the world where you can go online, get in contact with these people and say, when is your next event? You show up to an event, it's a networking opportunity. In a city, 3,000 miles away, yet these are the people that frequented the same bars and classrooms as you when you were a student. So those tangible connections are really important.
Global village.
Exactly.
Yeah, the world is a little neighborhood now.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Christy Clark was surprised on her trip to India and China just last month. The number of people that were stepping forward to say we'd like to increase our connections with BC, and they said, in fact, there's one bank that is setting up its first North American branch here in Vancouver, and said, why Vancouver? And he said, well, I went to UBC and I love it. So I think that kind of opened her eyes as well to the importance of universities fostering connections internationally.
If Alma Mater Society, let's take the flip side of what you've just been talking about. If Alma Mater Society had to write a paper somehow representing itself about foreign students, what positioning would you take?
In terms of?
Foreign students coming and studying at UBC. Is this in general a great thing? Are the revenues a great thing? Are there social or cultural problems? The standard complaint, to which I don't give much credence, but people vocalize this. They say, oh, they're taking space for my son and daughter. Could have gone.
Well, that argument doesn't hold much water because the province mandates the number of spots at each university with domestic students, and once that is met, the university takes a look at, well, how many more spots can we add for other students on our own dime, and then they open the doors to the international community, and those students pay 100% of the costs associated. So,
and foreign students, we have to say, do pay a pretty penny to attend, much more than a domestic student.
It's about 4 times as much.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah.
It's a lot of loot.
And from the AMS perspective, we are huge supporters of international students. About 15% of all students at UBC call somewhere other than Canada home, though we want them to stay here and call
AMS
home.
And the university itself goes out of its way to offer comfort to those kids. In other words, help with homestays, help with apartments, somehow acculturating people.
Yeah. So there are many support programs that are available for international students, both from cultural acclimatization to, helping you fill out your taxes to health and dental insurance. We try to offer as many services as we can.
Is there, while you have UBC students who are going off to Asia and other places, is there the opposite happening? Does AMS and/or the university go out of its way to encourage kids from Beijing or Shanghai or wherever to find roots in Vancouver, to find opportunities in Vancouver, and keep their expertise here?
Absolutely. The AMS, less so. We're a student union. We provide services to students, but the university has really taken to, and this has been evidenced by a national panel. There's the federal government has established a focus group on international student attraction and retention, because it's huge.
Yes.
If we're bringing those students here, we want them to learn and to help our system, and then we'd like them to be able to give back and stay here. So recently an announcement was made that PhD students international PhD students can be fast-tracked to permanent residency while they're here.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
In order to help, and this is a very recent revelation, and we'd like to see that expanded to undergraduate students as well. If you've spent nearly more than $100,000 on a Canadian degree, it should be a lot easier for you to be able to stay here and call it home.
I think many people would be surprised to learn something that you and I am sure already know, and that is that every university and college in the Lower Mainland has agents who go to Asia all the time, beating the drum for students, right?
Absolutely.
Signing up.
Absolutely.
Individuals and groups of students.
And in fact, it's become quite a competitive market
Yes.
because, not that Canadians are any less intelligent or any less ambitious than those around the world, but there are far fewer people in Canada than there are elsewhere. And so if these universities want to find the best and the brightest, to have the most innovation, to have the most creativity, they are going to compete with each other internationally to get those best students.
And what's your sense about your campus? Are you feeling that it's holding up competitively?
Absolutely.
I mean, it doesn't hurt that geographically we're closest to the Pacific Rim, but I mean, Toronto, McGill, Dalhousie, these are strong places.
But UBC's been quite aggressive in its strategy to become globally significant. That's sort of one of its big things, and you see that in the international rankings over the last 5 years. We've jumped 10 spots, and we're trying to attract international faculty, international students who can bring a lot to the university. I think we're actually doing pretty well.
Okay, we're going to take a little break. When we come back, we'll talk about issues that are very local, like rapid transit.
Great.
Okay, our guest is Jeremy, not James. Jeremy McElroy, not to be confused with Rory the golfer. Jeremy McElroy from Alma Mater Society, Student Union, UBC. We'll take a little breather and thank all these people. Thank you, of course, and remind you that you can contact us at davidberner.com. And thank these folks for supporting us here on Shaw Community Television, Cable 4. KCM Wealth Management. Vancouver lawyers Dumal and Boscovich. The Vancouver Courier newspaper.
the president of the Alma Mater Society, student union at the University of British Columbia. Let's talk about things like rapid transit. Let's start specifically with rapid transit. Much talk about a grade level modern streetcar or dig a tunnel underground. One way or t'other, there seems to be a strong voice saying, let's get some rapid movement out here.
Absolutely. To put things in perspective about why there's a need for rapid transit, people take a look at Kitts and Point Grey and say, well, you know, it's low population density. There's not a whole lot going.
Sleepy town.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then you go out to the peninsula and you take a look at UBC, and it has a daytime population of nearly 70,000 people, 48,000 students, you know, 18,000 faculty and staff, and
It's
then
a
other
world.
residents.
It's an industry.
It's its own city that sits sort of way out there, and the vast majority of those people are coming from, you know, the other side of the city.
Yes.
And what we've seen is that the Broadway corridor, which is 4th to 16th, has more than 100,000 transit trips each day.
Wow.
It's the busiest diesel-oriented corridor in North America, to put things in perspective.
Is it? I didn't know
Every
that.
other area that has that much traffic
Yes.
has moved to a rapid transit system. We're the last ones.
Lovely.
And if you want to compare that, you say, oh, well, 100,000 isn't that much.
Yeah.
The Evergreen, the Millennium Line,
Yes.
which was opened more than 10 years ago,
Yes.
has a annual use of about 70,000 people a day. So on its opening day, if a train line were to be opened along Broadway, it would have
be more than
30,000
that.
more people. And in fact, if the Canada Line experience where there's a 20% increase in transit on its first day opening were to happen on the Broadway corridor.
And it would take a bunch of the 99 line off the road.
It would take nearly 200 buses off the road to be able to be deployed elsewhere in the region, like in Surrey, where, you know, articulated buses are in high demand.
Yeah.
It would take them off the road.
I didn't know
which
there
would-
was anything in Surrey that was articulated. Sorry.
I'll leave that one.
Sorry.
But it would also take those buses off the road, which would free up the street from a lot of big diesel congestion. It would quiet things down, and it would significantly decrease transit times
Okay,
for
so
people.
so pretty much everybody on campus wants rapid transit. Now, is there a voice for level grade?
Not really.
Why not? Get
from-
with the program. Yeah.
I know there's been a whole lot of, well, let's have a pretty streetcar, but the reality is that a streetcar doesn't have the capacity and won't have the speed to actually handle that volume of people over that distance.
Disagree.
It's a 13-kilometer stretch
Yes.
from the VCC Clark Station to UBC.
Okay, what are you doing this summer?
Sorry?
What are you doing this summer?
What am I doing this summer?
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure yet.
Okay, buy a ticket, go to Dublin, go see the Luas, which is the level grade line, okay, built by the French, paid for itself in a year. It's a phenomenal system, Jeremy, and it goes 13 kilometers easily, and it's boom, 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 lots of bodies, lots of human beings. It's a great system. And I think many, many systems around the world, they're not just pretty streetcars. They're streamlined, they're moving, they're getting out there. I really hope UBC people take a look at that, because digging under, aside from the mess it makes, or putting those cement things,
That's out of the question.
yeah, SkyTrain, we're talking 10 times the money.
But it's an investment, and it pays dividends. If you take a
so
look at
is level grade.
if you want to protect the culture of the communities along the West Broadway area, and if you want to have high volumes of people traveling vast distances, streetcars are great when you're going 1-2 stops. When you're going for intra-community travel, inter-community travel requires heavy rail. And you know, as much as I'd like BC in the 1970s to have committed to its region-wide light rail system, unfortunately in '86 we made a commitment to heavy rail. All the infrastructure is in place, and there's become that dependence. And in our opinion, the only option would be below-grade rapid rail out to the UBC campus in order to facilitate future development and to protect the
I don't agree with you.
character
We'll
of the
leave the
communities.
subject, and I'll just, you know, normally you could get away with bringing up Latin, you know, intra, but I'm a Latin scholar, so it doesn't work. Okay. What else? What else do the students and does AMS feel really passionate about these days?
Oh, what don't we feel passionate about?
Well, I don't know. I mean, you do all kinds of services.
We do.
You do all kinds of wonderful things, including obscure things like walking people home at night, which seems like nothing, but
it's significant if people are being attacked.
Well, it's not necessarily that people are being attacked, but people want to feel safe on campus.
Yeah.
It's not a well-lit campus. It's very big. It's 1,000 acres. It's huge, and with a high daytime population, there aren't a whole lot of people that are around at night.
And there's lots of residency there.
There are.
You have the numbers on the residency?
There's about 9,000 students that live on campus.
Okay.
It's the largest on-campus program in the country. But still, that's less than 30% of campus that lives on. So there is a need, and people would like to have to feel safe, and sometimes that means having someone walk you from the library to the bus loop.
Is that literally what happens? I mean, what happens? Let's say some young girl or boy just feels it's kind of spooky. Everybody have a phone number?
Yeah, there's a central dispatch line, and someone will come out, pick you up. There'll be a group of them, and they'll walk you home.
And it's never one person?
No, it's
two or more
always
people?
Two people and mixed gender to make sure that they still feel safe.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, what else do our students feeling really urgent about and antsy about? What do they feel has to happen in the next little while? Let's talk about money. Money being spent. What about fees?
Students, as always, are frustrated with the cost of education and the ever-increasing costs, especially of living in Vancouver.
Yep.
And there's a number of different aspects involved with that. Increasingly, one of the big advocacy priorities for the AMS is on childcare. And you might say, how does childcare line up with post-secondary education? But in a world where there's an increasing level of expectation of higher education in jobs, you're getting a lot of people that are going back to school, having spent a few years out. So you're getting
a lot of have children.
You're getting a lot of people with children. You're getting a lot of single parents. The need for a graduate degree is increasingly more prevalent today. So you have undergraduate students that'll go straight into graduate school at the time in their life when they do want to start a family. And so having access to affordable, high-quality childcare is particularly big. And when the cheapest spot you can get is $900 and the student loan system only gives you $700 a month for that, there are burdens to the costs.
There are. I mean, lots of people. I used to live in West Point Grey until recently, and there are lots and lots, thousands of, as you know, because you run the AMS rentals line, lots and lots of folks who rent out basement flats and rent out rooms and so on. And you can find accommodation for less than $900, but it's still not cheap.
It's not cheap. That was childcare specifically.
Yeah.
The student loan program gives you $560 a month for rent.
Yeah.
And good luck finding anything west of commercial for that much.
Oh, I was going to say you can find a great place out in Ladner.
And that's another big one is access to housing.
Yes.
There's a huge rental, I'll call it a crisis in Vancouver. You have more than 4,000 new renters entering the system every year and approximately 200 new units being built. So not only is our vacancy rate one of the lowest of any metropolitan area in North America, but we also, with the general surcharge of living in the peninsula, rents are way out of reach for most people. And so transit times are then increasing. So students are having to live further and further away from campus, which then ties back into why we need some rapid transit.
We're all familiar with the stories of students having, graduating and having $100,000 in student loans or $50,000 in student loans. Are those just bank loans? I mean, is there some special accommodation in terms of lending monies out to students?
Sort of. The provincial and federal governments offer government loans, but they are limited. In our opinion, they don't actually meet the needs of students right now. So students are increasingly having to seek out private debt. And there are student lines of credit that banks offer, but the terms of those can oftentimes be cumbersome from students while they're in school. And then by the time they get to graduation, whether they've borrowed from the bank of mom and dad, from Bank of Montreal, from the government, they're left with a sizable bill, and interest is adding up. So it's an increasingly big concern for students.
What about political voice? UBC seems, it's such an idyllic, beautiful place. It seems curiously quiet for a university campus. Not that we need to have campuses in an uproar all the time, but I don't get the feeling that there's, unless you call a particular seminar and you'll let people come to the microphone and get pretty vocal, I don't get a feeling that there's going to be some insurrection there any minute.
And that's unfortunately just sort of a change in the demographics of university students. In the last decade, the cost of education has increased by 100%. So my generation is paying 100% more than any other generation before them,
Yes.
which means that they are 100% more likely to be working outside of class time.
Yes.
Whereas, you know, back in the day, students had the time to organize and protest. And I think, you know, the expectations of students are significantly higher these days. The need to graduate with honors and to go on to grad school is higher, and so students just are overburdened.
But so many of the public protests that have happened around the world, I'm thinking about the Arab Spring, and then of course Occupy Wall Street and those kinds of things, they all happen amazingly, I don't have it it's in my briefcase, because of that toy we all have, because of the Android and the iPhone and so on. It all happened very spontaneously, you know. And yet I don't have any expectation that I'm going to be reading about something at UBC by Wednesday.
No, and unfortunately there's a bit of a complacency in Canada for that. I think the clearest demonstration of a general disquiet with my generation was the rise in the NDP in the last federal election. You saw them go from 30 seats to well over 100 seats, and that was very clearly a demonstration that people were not happy with the status quo. And I think Canadians just in general have a different way of expressing our frustrations politically and otherwise than those to the south or those across the pond.
We are a mild and gentle and polite people.
We are, and unfortunately it gets in the way of rather big social change.
Almost everything. We just take it all out on the hockey rink. That's where we punch everybody.
Or in the streets after Game 7.
Exactly. Jeremy, dynamite.
Yeah,
Thanks so much.
Great
to have you here. Okay, folks, that's it for this week. We thank you for being with us. Remind you again, davidberner.com is the site to go to if you want to send us a note. And a B flat, that would be the note. Next week, Joel Bakken, UBC professor, has written a book, what's it called? Children Under Siege, is that the correct title? I think so, Children Under Siege. And what he's talking about, and keep in mind this is the guy who wrote The Corporation, which was turned into a fabulous documentary movie, and the book itself was fabulous. And Joel is a great speaker and an old friend. And Children Under Siege, that's what it's about. It's about advertisers creating a market for children. It's kind of ugly, to tell you the truth, but it'll be a good conversation. Thanks for being with us. We appreciate your being here on Shaw Community Television, Cable 4. Good night.